I didn't expect to meet an alien woman on the edge of the Perseus Drift, least of all one bleeding silver, and clutching a shattered beacon like it was her last prayer. Out here, beyond the regulated lanes and polite wars of the core systems, you learn not to ask questions unless you were prepared for answers that could ruin you. I was a salvager by trade, scraping forgotten hulls, derelict stations, and the occasional black box that someone high up wanted erased from history. My ship, the Wayward Sun, wasn't pretty, but she was reliable, and reliability kept you alive longer than ideals ever did. The distress signal came in fragmented pulses, old and desperate. Not a standard coalition code. Not pirate either. I almost ignored it. Almost. The beacon led me to a debris field orbiting a dead moon, its surface cracked like an egg left too long in vacuum. And there she was, drifting in a torn pressure cocoon, bioluminescent markings flickering weakly across pale blue skin. Humanoid mostly. 2 arms, 2 legs, eyes too large for a human face, and hair that moved like liquid glass even in 0G. She was alive. Barely. I brought her aboard against every survival instinct I had. Her name, I learned later, was Esselyn of House Kareth. At the time, she was just another soul the universe was trying to erase. She woke 3 days later in my medbay, eyes snapping open with a sharp intake of breath. Her gaze darted around, taking in the cramped metal walls, the humming of life support systems, and finally me, sitting across the room with a plasma cutter resting casually in my lap. We stared at each other for a long moment. "You are not of the Chivalry," she said finally, her voice soft but steady. "Good guess," I replied. "I'm human." She tried to sit up, failed, and winced. I stood and helped her, surprised by how light she was. "You should not have saved me," she said. "I get that a lot," I muttered. Over the next few days, Esselyn told me her story in fragments. Her people were not conquerors or traitors. They were archivists, keepers of living memory, their minds partially integrated with biocrystalline implants that stored generations of history. That made them valuable. And in this galaxy, valuable things were hunted. The Chivalry were one such hunter species, raiders who didn't care about treaties or borders. They'd ambushed her family convoy, slaughtered the escorts, and shattered their flagship. Esselyn had escaped in a lifeboat, but not before watching her parents die in front of her. She had nowhere to go. So I did something incredibly stupid. I offered her refuge. Word travels fast in space, even when you don't want it to. 2 weeks after I picked Esselyn up, my long-range sensors lit up with a jump signature that made my stomach drop. A ship emerged from fold space like a knife cutting through reality, sleek, massive, and unmistakably alien. House Kareth had found her. The ship didn't attack. It hailed me instead, broadcasting on every known frequency. The message was formal, cold, and heavy with authority. "Human vessel, you are harboring Esselyn of House Kareth. Power down your engines and prepare for delegation." Esselyn went pale when she heard it. "They should not be here," she whispered. "Not so soon." I could have run. The Wayward Sun was fast enough to maybe escape if I pushed her past safety limits. But running would mean abandoning Esselyn to whatever fate awaited her. I didn't. I powered down and waited. They came aboard with honor guards and ritual armor that shimmered like starlight frozen into shape. Tall, elegant beings with elongated features and eyes that glowed faintly with inner light. At their center was an older male, his presence commanding without a word spoken. "Human," he said. "I am Veilcor, Patriarch of House Kareth." I swallowed. "Your daughter's safe here." "She should not be," he replied. "Her survival has consequences." That was my first warning. We sat in my cargo bay, converted into a makeshift council chamber. Veilcore explained that Esselin was more than just his daughter. She was a bearer of the ancestral lattice, a rare genetic and neural configuration that allowed her to carry the full memory archive of their house. With her parents dead, she was the last living vault of their lineage. And because of that, House Kareth faced annihilation. "The Shulvori hunt us for what we know," Veilcore said. "Without Esselin, our house will fracture. With her, we will be hunted until extinction. So take her home," I said. "Protect her." Veilcore's gaze hardened. "We cannot." That's when he made the demand. "You must bind yourself to her." The room went silent. I laughed at first, thinking it was a mistranslation. It wasn't. Human law, culture, and biology render you uniquely suitable, Veilcore continued. A bonding ritual. A permanent union. Through you, Esselin would gain legal and cultural asylum under human protection. House Kareth would be shielded by your species' treaties and reputation. I stared at him. "You're asking me to marry your daughter, so your entire house can hide behind humanity?" "Yes." Esselin looked at me, horror and apology warring on her face. "I would never force this," she said quickly. "Father, It is necessary," Veilcore interrupted. "And it is her choice. And yours." I felt the weight of the galaxy press down on me in that moment. I spent that night alone on the bridge, watching stars drift past the viewport, wondering how my life had gone so catastrophically off course. Marriage to an alien noble. A target painted on my back by one of the most ruthless species in known space. Becoming a political shield for an entire civilization I barely understood. And yet, when I thought of saying no, all I could see was Esselin drifting alone in the void, her light fading. She joined me quietly, standing beside me. "I will not think less of you if you refuse," she said. "You owe me nothing." I studied her face, strong despite the grief etched into every line. "What do you want?" She hesitated. "I want my people to live. And I want to choose my own fate, for once." Humanity had a reputation out here. Stubborn. Aggressive. Unwilling to bow, even when it would be smarter to do so. We were a shield species, not because we were the strongest, but because once we took responsibility for something, we didn't let go. I sighed. Figures. I finally try to do one good thing, and the universe hands me a dynasty. She smiled faintly. "Is that a yes?" "It's a yes." The bonding ceremony was nothing like a human wedding. No rings. No vows. Instead, Esselin and I stood before a living crystal lattice that resonated with our heartbeats, syncing our neural patterns just enough to register us as a single legal entity under Kareth law. It didn't overwrite who we were. It didn't steal our free will, but it connected us. I felt her emotions as echoes, her fear, her hope, her fierce determination. She felt my stubbornness, my protective instincts, my reckless sense of responsibility. When it was done, Veilcore bowed to me. "House Kareth is in your debt, Shieldbearer." That title followed me everywhere after that. The Shulvori didn't take the news well. 3 months later, they attacked a human trade convoy near the Helios Reach. Humanity responded the only way it ever did, decisively, and with overwhelming force. The moment House Kareth fell under human protection, the rules changed. What followed wasn't a war. It was a lesson. Human fleets didn't just push the Shulvori back. They dismantled their supply lines, exposed their hidden bases, and broadcast their atrocities across the galactic net. Allies the Shulvori had bullied into silence turned on them overnight. Within a year, the Shulvori were no longer hunters. They were refugees. Esselin and I never pretended our bond was simple. It began as necessity, not romance. But shared danger has a way of forging something real from the artificial. We learned each other's rhythms. She taught me the songs encoded in her people's memory crystals, histories sung, not spoken. I taught her how humans cooked terrible food and called it comfort. House Kareth rebuilt, slowly, under human protection. Their archives were shared with our scientists, opening doors to technologies and philosophies long thought lost. In return, humanity gained something rarer than knowledge: trust. Years later, standing on a station overlooking a newborn star, Essie took my hand. "You know," she said, "my father once believed humans were dangerous." I snorted. "We are." She smiled. "Yes. But sometimes, danger is exactly what keeps the darkness away." I had offered refuge to one alien woman. In return, I became family to an entire world and helped remind the galaxy why, when humanity chose to protect something, it was best to stand very far out of the way. The galaxy never quite went back to the way it was before Essie drifted into my life. Years later, historians would mark that moment, the sheltering of a single alien woman aboard an unremarkable human salvage ship, as the quiet beginning of what they called the Shield Accords. They'd argue about treaties, fleet movements, and political leverage. They'd debate whether humanity acted out of altruism or self-interest. They'd miss the point entirely. I stood beside Essie on the observation deck of New Kareth, watching her people walk freely beneath an artificial sky no longer haunted by fear. Children traced glowing patterns through the air, practicing memory songs instead of evacuation drills. Elders spoke openly, their voices no longer whispers meant to avoid predators. House Kareth had survived, not because they hid, but because someone stood in front of them and said no further. Essie leaned into me, her presence a familiar warmth through the bond we shared, not overwhelming, not intrusive, just there. A quiet certainty. "You changed the course of my people," she said softly. I shook my head. "You did. I just didn't step aside." That was the part humans never seemed to get credit for. We weren't saviors. We weren't conquerors. We were stubborn creatures who refused to abandon what we'd chosen to protect, even when the cost was high. Especially then. Across the stars, other species began to test the edges of that truth. Some cautiously, some foolishly. Each learned the same lesson the Chivalry had learned too late. Humanity did not seek dominion. But once you were under our protection, you were no longer alone. Essie turned to face me, her eyes reflecting starlight and something deeper, something earned. "If I had not fled that day," she said, "if you had ignored the signal." I smiled faintly. "Then the universe would have found another way. But it wouldn't have been our way." She laughed quietly, a sound that still felt like a miracle. Far beyond the viewport, fleets moved, borders shifted, and empires rose and fell, as they always had. But here, between a human who refused to look away and an alien woman who refused to surrender her people's future, something unbreakable had been forged. Not a treaty. Not a weapon, a bond. And in a galaxy that had learned to fear humanity's wrath, this was the truth that endured longest. We were at our most dangerous, not when we sought war, but when we chose family.